Hey, let's have a look at several superpowers and their wars and some lessons learned about it. And then let's have a look at the Ukraine war and what we can learn, especially in the area of nuclear weapons. So, let's look at first when we start with the Vietnam War, then Afghanistan, Russia, Afghanistan, US, Iraq, and US and Ukraine war then. So, if we look at, we had here superpowers, like the United States and USSR and now Russia, and they were trying to conquer and control a country which was, like from the technology side, much less advanced and has much lower capabilities. And still, they had to pull out. It didn't really work. And that were like the biggest conflicts, war conflicts we had on the planet during the last decades. So let's start with the Vietnam War. So US America on one side, Vietnam on the other. Like first world country, third world country fighting each other, and the United States trying to control Vietnam. But there, the population was actually willing to fight. And one thing is really the cultural difference. The culture of US America and the culture of Vietnam are really different. So that population was willing to fight and they were willing to take the casualties. Of course, they were supplied weapons by allies like Russia and China, but they were actually willing to fight. And in the end, the US Americans lost so many people, so many casualties that they ended the war. So it was so costly because for the United States, the casualties are really a problem. So then we had Afghanistan and Russia, more or less the same thing. There's this nice film of Alexander the Great and conquering Afghanistan and then sending back his mother some soil from that country, and then strange things happen, and he's complaining that in this country everything is going wrong. Really watch that film. But like Russia, USSR actually invaded Afghanistan and they pulled out. Why? Because the people were resisting and they were willing to take the casualties. And they were resisting, and in the end, they saw it's not really working. That country is really terrible, to control. And well, the Russians showed this that it doesn't work, and of course, US America has to do it and try it in themselves, and tried the same thing, and again, it didn't work. Because there were a large population, especially the Taliban, resisting, and of course also there between like U.S. America's culture and the culture of Afghanistan, there is such a big difference that they are not going to accept to be ruled by that nation. Well, and then we had Iraq and the United States and its allies. So we had several campaigns in Iraq. Iraq was first fighting against Iran, but then there was like desert storm. Iraq invaded Kuwait, and then they were driven out. And of course, with all the military might and power, of course, US America was able to push them out of Kuwait, and then conquer like the whole of Iraq. And well, that worked, and it didn't really take that long. Why? Because the military power of these two nations was totally different. But let's say US America conquered the Iraq, and then they couldn't hold it. Because like the culture again is so different that the people weren't accepting that you are ruling them. And then they had to live with insurgency for years, and then they pulled out and they're left just sort of a chaos. So what did you learn from this? It's sometimes, as a very powerful nation with a lot of military, it's easy to invade, but to hold the thing, it's sort of complicated. Now let's have a look at Ukraine. Well, first of all, Russia invaded Ukraine in a special military operation. They achieved initial advances. Then they weren't really prepared to hold the whole thing. Pulled back, and then now for years we see this fighting, which is like coming to a complete stalemate. And what is really the good thing about the Ukraine war, I think, from my perspective, the Ukraine war is one of the biggest peacekeeping missions on the planet right now, because Russia had so much material available and it's burning through all that stuff with such a, it's just burning up all the tanks and artillery and rocket systems, and everything what they have left is going to be shredded right now in Ukraine. So it's like the biggest disarmament kind of operation. It's cynical, I know. There are a lot of people are dying, and it's really bad. But it's like all that military might of Russia is just going to evaporate. You see that most of the navy is practically useless. You see that most of the aircraft are practically useless. You see that they have certain systems like Iskander and missiles and so on, which are sort of working. But they're burning really through with such rates, or they have lost thousands of tanks and BMPs and vehicles. So all that kind of material base which they had, which were like so enormous compared to other nations, they're just burning it and destroying it in Ukraine. So you could say that war should be going on for at least like a year or two more, because then they really have burned that stuff. Now they also start burning material from North Vietnam, and sorry, not North Korea. So they get artillery shells from North Korea. So they get personnel from North Korea. That's going to be bad for North Korea anyway, because that will be another video. But so they're disarming North Korea. So they take all the munitions and they burn it in Ukraine. So probably soon the South Koreans, because they see that the North Koreans are delivering all that stuff, that means on the peninsula there's less munitions, they can stand theirs. And if I guess the North Koreans are starting to deliver in the future also like artillery and whatever they still have left, so they are going to send really equipment over, not only munitions, then that is going to get burned, and the South Koreans can get rid of their old stuff. So it's like a disarmament. The disarmament is going to take place in South Korea as well. But still, there are still these enormous yards, and people are watching this on satellite images on like there were all these tanks, and now the tanks are gone, and they are going to get refurbished and sent into the grinder in Ukraine. So actually, you could say, hey, Russia was one superpower with much military might, and it's destroying this power right now and getting rid of all that old material. And this is like a really good cleanup operation. It's very cynical, I know, but it's really like getting rid of all kinds of military material in Ukraine. So, is this war going to get nuclear? I guess not, because it's completely senseless to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Because, the Russians want to have that area. They say it's ours, at least, certain parts. They would like to have the whole of Ukraine inside under control. But they are like probably not really having that idea anymore. But if you take their objectives, like to have certain Luhansk and Donetsk region and so on, and say, hey, these areas we want to annex, they're going to get much more. They want to have these regions. So why should you be using nuclear weapons there? You would have to use a nuclear weapon at the front. In that area, want to conquer. You throw a nuclear weapon there. No. So it doesn't really make sense to use nuclear weapons inside of the Ukraine war. You also, they would use nuclear weapons on any city and destroy a city, that's going to really make Russia over the edge, and everybody would be against them. No, so they haven't used that thing. They won't use it because why? Yeah, they want to actually have that area under their own control. It doesn't make sense to make nuclear wasteland and then say, now I have now the Luhansk region, which is like a nuclear wasteland, and nobody's going to live there anymore because it's deadly. It's not really a big wing, is it? So that thing is not going to be going nuclear. So what else can we do? It's like a whole disarmament thing if the US America still has large stockpiles also of tanks. In Germany, we have tanks. What actually we should be doing is give all our tanks and all our stuff to the Ukrainians. Why? Hey, they're fight. We don't have to fight ever with these tanks against an enemy because they are doing it for us. As a German, I would say, hey, of course we should give all our tanks and all our everything we have. We should give it to the Ukrainians because they are fighting all the material which the Russians would have to actually invade in the direction of Germany. We don't have to destroy all that tanks and stuff. So let's give all of it's like initially the Polish people, what they were doing, they were like, okay, give everything to the Ukrainians they had. Of course, Poland is really at the border, so they are not in the really giving everything. But here in Germany, we should really be saying, hey, let's get all our stuff, all our Leopards, give them to Ukraine. Okay, so that would be one thing, but because we are not expecting to actually use these Leopards we have here in Germany anytime soon. Are we? No. So let's give them to the Ukrainians, build new ones, which is going to take some time. We are not building tanks like in the Cold War, but the US America is sitting on large stockpile. They have several thousand of Abrams tanks stored somewhere in the desert. Let's buy them. And that's also Mr. Trump is going to be the next president again. He's doesn't want to spend so much money on the Ukraine war, which I can understand, because he says, you European guys, you have to take care of this. But if you go to Mr. Trump and say, hey, you have several thousand Abrams tanks there stored in the desert, can we buy 1,000 of them? You have 3,000, I think, or several thousand they have stored. And, we go to Mr. Trump and say, hey, you have several thousand Abrams tanks there stored in the desert. Can we buy 1,000 of them? And then we bargain about the price. They refurbish them a bit, put a decent thermal on them, and ship them. Because what the heck do the US Americans need thousands of tanks for? Who's invading US America? Nobody. Really, come on, yeah. So, and Trump would be great. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm going to sell 1,000 tanks for, let's say, 10 million a piece or 5 million. Let's say 5 million a piece. They are used ones, yeah. So let's say 5 million a piece, 1,000 tanks, $5 billion. Go, make a deal, make some money. Ship the stuff over, then we would have tanks again, and we can feed all that stuff to the Ukrainians. What they're doing is, they're just grinding down all the equipment of Russia. And that's basically the operation. We are getting rid. The Ukraine war is really a peacekeeping mission because it's diminishing really much the possibility of Russia to actually fight anything else. And of course, everybody knows now, hey, if the Russians are trying to come, we know how to stop them. Let them in a little bit, fight them back. And everybody was afraid of that they have these big stockpiles of old stuff. But when this old stuff is gone, they are only down to new production. And that's going to be a complete different story. So they're not going to rebuild tens of thousands of tanks stored somewhere. They're going to have sort of a normal army again. And then everybody would see them as not such a big threat anymore anyway. And that conquering Oh yeah, I forgot this in the war. Yeah, because 2 times people tried to conquer Russia. The first one was Napoleon, I think, and he failed drastically. So he marched in there with like a million soldiers, and he came back just with a few thousands, and really with a kick in the butt. And yeah, well, I'm German, and we tried this ourselves in the 1940s, in the Second World War, and we just kicked out there as well because Russia is just too big, and everybody learned, hey, trying to invade Russia, not a good idea. And whoever actually, why should we actually do this? That has fallen out. It's like everybody learned the lesson that, if you invade a country and that country doesn't like you, it's not going to work. And that's like really the thing, that one reason for having nuclear weapons is to be afraid that somebody is trying to conquer you. Everybody, I think, today understands that who wants to invade Russia? Huh? The US Americans? No, you want to you want to get Russia for free? Yeah, right. No, sorry, but who wants to, invading another country who doesn't like you, and your like culture is so far off, doesn't work. If that country has a willingness to actually resist for years and decades, you are going to lose and go out. That was like in Vietnam, the population was fighting. In Afghanistan, Russia, the population was fighting. Afghanistan and US, you are fighting. Iraq and US pulled out. And now Ukraine? Yeah, if one other solution to the Ukraine war was actually say, hey, let's make a peace. I think most people don't want them to have a peace, but just really grind down all these military resources. And that's why we are like drip feeding the Ukrainians this stuff. And from the point of view of a German, I would say, hey, of the European governments, they should be, if Mr. Trump is like reducing the amount of aid to Ukraine, we should just be stepping in and say, hey, we pay for it. Just sell us the stuff and we give it to the Ukrainians. I think that would be a deal Mr. Trump would be going for, President Trump. And if there's like a ceasefire, and then it will probably last several decades, but if they are willing to fight and go for insurgency type of thing, the Russians are probably going to pull out there at some time. Yeah? Not in sort of a war, but if the population is changed, yeah, we will see. It's a very interesting question if how this is going to end. If this population, because the Ukrainians and Russians, they are from cultural wise much nearer than, let's say, US America and Vietnam. Yeah? Of course, they will probably say, we have great differences between Russians and Ukrainians, but they're like, looked from the outside, they are small. So there's really the question is a population, if there's a ceasefire, are they going to willing to go on for years or decades of resistance and drive the Russians then back out over time? Yeah, but really from the question of nuclear weapons, no. Nuclear weapons don't make sense to be used in the Ukraine war, not at all. You wouldn't gain anything from it. It's completely useless. You destroy that what you want to conquer. And actually, from the look at world peace, yeah, you see that Russia isn't really such a big threat. And yeah, I would really say, hey, as Germans, we should get all our whatever the Ukrainians want, we should give it to them. Aircraft, tanks, artillery, all our stuff that we are completely depleted. We give everything, rebuild it, buy it back from the US Americans. That would be the solution, I would say, we should do here in Europe. Okay, that's already a long video. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, follow the channel. If you want to do something against nuclear weapons, go to zero-nukes.net and join. Thank you very much.